I just want to welcome everybody to our webinar to discuss global payroll. I'm going to do some quick introductions with the gentlemen who are with me here in Reading. We're going to talk through the expectations from a global payroll perspective, so what the market expects, what our clients expect, and what BDO expects. And we'll then segue into talking around the global payroll landscape. So what trends are we seeing? What are people talking about? What is available to you when you go out to market? We're then going to talk a little bit more around BDO and our approach to global payroll. We'll then move into a demonstration. We're going to show you our Evolve platform, which covers all of our payroll processing countries. If you need to ask any questions, or if you feel like you want to ask anything, if you could please use the chat function. I see a couple coming through okay already, and we'll get to those towards the end. So yes, without any further ado, we'll move into the introductions. So my name is Neil McAllister. I head up the Global Business Development team from a global payroll perspective for BDO, covering all of our in-country providers, as well as the UK and the global payroll team. I'm joined here by Neil Pinches as well. So Neil is our Global Transition Director, so he looks after the transition from non-client to client, or from clients onto one platform from another. He has several remits, including product development, product management as well. And I'm also joined by Ashley Carter, who is the overall head of Global Payroll Services for BDO. So I'm just going to hand over to Ashley, who's just going to talk through why we're here, really.
Good morning, and as Neil said, good afternoon and good evening, no matter where you are in the world. You are very, very welcome to this webcast. So, as Neil said, I'm head of Global Payroll Services here at BDO. I've been with BDO for the last 10 years running payroll as well as other service lines. And those 10 years have seen a lot of change. There was a time when clients were really happy just to give us a fully built to gross file, and we just got on and did a bit of gross to net, produced a payslip, everyone was happy. Those times have changed, and they are still changing. And what this webcast is all about is understanding where those expectations are going from our clients, and also where the market is going from the supply side. And our perspective is always threefold when we're thinking payroll. It's from the employee, clearly that's the person who wants the payslip, they want the pay, they've got to pay the mortgage, feed the children. From the employer, so that's normally HR, but it's sometimes finance or a blended role, but also the employing entity, because once you are an employer, then there are all sorts of corporate responsibilities you take. So in my invitation, I mentioned that we'll be going from what some people see as just the basics, the data exchange, but that has changed from being just a flat file exchange to now very, very interactive. So we have clients, I know lots of other fellow suppliers in the market have clients where the data is being exchanged on a daily basis, and some have a high expectation of the amount of validation and the amount of value added to that data before the production of the payslip. My colleague Neil Pinches will be talking through that. Then once you've got the basics operating, it's about getting visibility and control of global operations, and Neil McAllister will be talking more about that. But in my invitation, I talked about the complementary services, the services that the employee, the employer, and the employing entity all expect. And they all need it, whether you, as the client, or indeed we've got some BDO teams dialed in, so fellow suppliers in this market, whether those activities which are covered on the slide which is on your screen now, whether they're covered by an in-house team with just the payroll being outsourced, or whether they're provided by an integrated team on a national basis, or maybe even an integrated team on a global basis, is very much a choice. It's a choice of where the burdens, where the costs, and where the risks are going to lie. And clearly, the more of those that you outsource, the more you incur external cost, but the idea being that you can balance the risks down and balance the burdens down. So I will come back to that at the end, but just to bring that to life, and to show that there is so much more to payroll than just a payslip. In the UK, lots of change going on because of Brexit, and one of the announcements that was made at exactly the same time as Brexit was that our national minimum wage was going up by 6%. And in the UK, where people think it's probably one of the easiest jurisdictions to do payrolls, suddenly there's a potential for a lot of employees to become liable, and the our tax people see it as criminally liable if they fail to comply. And a football team has just realised that it is going to become non-compliant because it gives its staff tickets to the football matches. Those tickets have not risen by 6.2%, and therefore the value of those tickets, the value of that benefit, is now below national minimum wage. So there are all sorts of unexpected traps where expertise is needed, and that's just in the UK where things are about as simple as they get. So that's the context for today. You're very, very welcome to ask questions as the WebEx continues. You're also very welcome to contact us afterwards with any other follow-up questions and requests for direct interaction. But without further ado, I shall hand over to Neil McAllister.
Thank you, Ashley. So I guess we generally need a starting point. There is a reason why people like me end up talking to clients, companies, even within BDO internally with regards to global payroll. And it's generally because there's a problem somewhere, or a challenge, or an issue, or people want to do things better. And I've been doing this a long time, and I generally find that the expectations from most of our clients ultimately are the same. They want a single platform, they want a single point of view to look at all of their global payrolls and data, a way of standardizing controls and processes and getting away from having half a dozen or a dozen or 20 different processes across the globe. Compliance is a big piece, particularly at local level and globally. Single failure points. So a lot of companies grow exponentially, and as they grow, they end up with what I would describe as sticking plaster solutions, so point-in-time solutions. So we would look to try and get rid of those failure points. Integration reporting, that's a given. That is a standard obligation of any payroll provider to provide that. And obviously something that's modern, something that harmonizes all of the processes across the business. What's interesting is when we developed our global payroll offering, these were also our expectations. This is what we needed to do. So actually the obligation on us to deliver those is also the expectation of us to live those. So what's happening in the market? Well, 90% of companies believe that they can achieve cost savings by outsourcing, but only around 2/3 of those have actually done it, and the way they've done it is generally with disparate payroll providers, so lots of different providers that I mentioned point in time. And an interesting study by SD Works into this market over a 3-year period realized that around half of the employees in EMEA alone had been paid late or incorrectly. Still unclear as to whether those are SD Works clients or whether they are a mixture. I'm not sure. I'll leave you to decide. So what are the issues? Generally, payroll technology is just not suitable for complex multi-country operations. You only have to look at some very, very well documented cases in the market of companies who are trying to develop in-country payroll engines, and they struggle. Generally ending up with 6 or 7, and it'll take them several years to build them. Most providers don't have a genuinely global footprint. They rely on a network of third parties. There's a lot of complexity around compliance. There are around 2,500 compliance changes globally just in payroll last year. And HR platforms, so there's a growing trend for global HR to drive changes into global payroll. There is a challenge with that. A lot of those applications are bought at a single point or from a single country without a lot of consideration for what actually is required at a local level to drive payroll. So we can talk about that in a little bit more detail. But that's kind of what we're seeing generally in the market at the moment. And what is available to you? So as you look to implement or review your processes, you can generally go to one of three types of provider providing global payroll services. There are the global processors, who are what we consider the big boys, the enterprise grade. Generally, they want a minimum headcount of 5,000 employees per country. Generally, they operate in about 20 countries, and then they will use a provider like BDO, potentially, or one of our competitors to deliver the smaller payrolls, what we call the long tail. So you would look at people like NGA, ADP's Global View offering, which is built in SAP, Ceridian as well. It's very good in terms of technology, very, very dependent on technology, but very feature-rich. The challenge is you end up effectively with two agreements within one agreement across the globe. You could then look at a local processor, and most organizations will do this at a point in time. So they will grow or enter a country, and they just need to get people paid. So they'll turn to a local CPA or a local provider, which is great because they get local expertise. They get a presence in country. They have a language skill. The time difference isn't an issue. The challenge is you need lots of them, and you need somebody to coordinate that resource across the estate. And then you have the aggregators. So they kind of materialized in the mid-'80s, looking for a way to consolidate the information coming from all the local processors. So you had the emergence of people like Safeguard and Immedis and ADP Streamline as well across their mixture of third parties. It's great because you get a single repository for reporting. You get flexibility around the local providers because you can generally pick and choose. But there's a lot of technology reliance, and the governance becomes very difficult because you're very much at the beck and call of the aggregator as to which of those local providers they can contract with. So that's kind of how we see the market split into three. And what is everybody talking about at the moment? Well, there's a lot of noise in the global payroll market. There's a lot of change. The main areas that we see constantly coming up are robotic process engineering, AI, integrations, and what else can you offer that isn't just a basic payroll processing service? So what is AI? What is RPA? So it's basically process automation. So what manual tasks can we get a robot or a bot to do? So it's great because you can get rid of all of your manual steps as much as you can. You get a very high return on investment. You can repurpose personnel and use their skills elsewhere. Increases your speed, increases your accuracy, and it encourages you to have a rule-based logic governing payroll, which is effectively a transaction. The challenge with it at the moment, from what I see and from the people that I've talked to, is if you have a poor process and you automate it, you still have a poor process. So you can't get away from that. And the market is riddled with examples of that. Similarly with the data, you're only as good as the quality of that. You need a reasonably large outlay at the start, whether that's technology or whether that's consultancy fees to actually scope out how that process should look. A lot of organizations will focus on short-term gains rather than the bigger picture. So that, again, goes back to what I call sticking plaster solutions. It is a bit of a buzzword at the moment. It's kind of, I would almost liken it to the emergence of electric cars. Everybody knows they should be doing it. Everybody knows it's great for the environment or great for their payroll. But it's just not quite there yet. But it will come, and there's a lot of development. There's a big area of focus. And again, it's an area of focus for BDO going forward too. Then we look at integrations. So every single project that I've worked on, I'd say in the last 2 years, has had an HR integration or a benefits integration or an expense integration with someone like Concur. So what do we mean by that? What do we mean is getting rid of a manual intervention between adding a starter and a lever in Workday and it feeding through to payroll, for example. It's great because in theory it gives you a single source of truth. So it gets rid of a lot of the manual workarounds, gives you a standard workflow, gets rid of duplication, gives you a good data set to report around, and visibility. You get one point of visibility so you can see everything in one place. Again, it comes back to data. If the data is not good, or if the stakeholder management haven't got cultural buy-in from the organization, or the initial implementation is not as good as it should be, this will always be a challenge. So similarly, actually, to the RPA model, it has quite a high failure rate. So the RPA failure rate at the moment is around 50% of projects don't deliver. In terms of HR, global HR and payroll integrations, it's somewhere around 35%, which is still pretty high. You still end up with that question, that point that I made earlier around custom fields, country by country, localized fields required. And we see this a lot, particularly with projects that are driven from the US. They're generally delivered as a one model fits all. And then your expectation on the global payroll vendor is actually to pick up the slack, which is fine. But one model doesn't fit all for integrations. In our experience, and my experience particularly, for example, if I use Workday as an example, no two instances of Workday are implemented in the same way. So actually to have a one model fits all becomes extremely difficult because there are always workarounds and then that becomes expensive. And it's difficult to retro-engineer those errors. Once the error is embedded or the code is written or the integration is built, it's quite difficult to go back and re-engineer those because you effectively have to rip it out and start from scratch again. The third trend, which is becoming more and more prevalent, so going back 10 years, this wasn't really even a conversation I was having, but now it absolutely is. So the expectation from clients and companies is that they need more than just payroll. They need complementary services, going to be expat, they want support with global mobility, they want help moving into new countries with accounting support, whatever it might be. If you have one-stop shop for that, it becomes very easy to buy those services because you can roll them into one overarching agreement. And it also forms a deeper partnership between the two companies, because there's a bigger reliance on both sides. So there's a reliance on the company providing the services to make sure they're delivering the services because they're relying on the revenue. There's a reliance from the other side because you're trusting the provider that they're going to do the job in the right way. Most organizations who offer, in inverted commas, a beyond payroll offering deliver them as a third-party network. So they're probably not specialists in their own field. They rely on third parties to do this. And BDO is no different in some areas. We have very trusted third parties as well. So there's nothing wrong with that. It does then tie into governance. And also a level of knowledge at the supplier and a local and a global level. So you end up doing a lot of due diligence around it. So those are just some trends I wanted to share with you. Those are things, I know there are a couple of people on the line that I've spoken to previously, and I know some of this stuff is front of mind for them. So just wanted to walk through that. So how does BDO approach the global market? Well, we looked at the three types of vendor: global, local, aggregator. And we thought, well, we have the global reach, we have the technology, and we have the local offices. So we kind of play in all three. So we can give you a strong governance structure. BDO has the local in-country providers. I know many of them are on the call today, and they're all experts in their field. We can give you a data source as an aggregator across all of that estate, which comes back to the common objectives that we talked to at the start. And as you'll see on the right-hand side, we actually play really well to all of them. I'm conscious I don't want this to turn into a sales pitch. It's not designed to be, but it's important for you to know that there are, in my knowledge, probably 3 or 4 companies globally that can offer you the same level of expertise in country under a single contract. Happy to discuss that with people offline as well. So what did we develop? Well, we developed Evolve, which most of you probably have heard of, as our global aggregation tool across all of our 167 countries that we service payrolls for. By and large, those 167 countries are BDO offices with a small handful of exceptions, normally for political or compliance reasons. We have a team of experts all around the world. We process about 5 million payslips a year for quite a number of clients globally. We chose the technology carefully, and we're going to show you it in a minute. So we built it in Salesforce, and we added a tool called Jitterbit in there, which allows us to do validations, allows us to do integrations, and then we put a front end, a nice visual there called Squid, to make it look much more pretty than Salesforce is in all its glory. So that gives us an aggregator tool. I won't go through this in too much detail, but suffice to say, it covers off everything that we talked about, so validations, reporting, workflow, etc., etc. And Neil Pinches is going to show you the platform in just a second. So we at BDO talk about an ecosystem. So an ecosystem is not just everything that happens on BDO's side of the fence, so all of our 7 streams in business, but it also includes your network. So what systems are you using? What processes have you got? Who are the characters at your end that need to integrate or interact with payroll? As far as we're concerned, it's one big ecosystem. It's not just BDO's. It's a partnership. And how does it work? We'll show you this in a bit more detail when we do the demo, but in simple terms, most of our clients will have a coordination team. BDO has a coordination team. Everything interacts on the Evolve platform, so all your data input, your integration, your SFTP uploads, any documents, any validation is done in Evolve. We then use workflow to manage tasks and cases. Each of the BDO countries will then receive a notification that there's been a change for Brazil or Kenya or wherever it might be in the world. They then pick up that workflow, process the payroll in their local engine because it's compliant, and provide the outputs back into Evolve. So that allows us to produce things like e-payslips, variance reports, GL reports, gross to net, and any data that needs to go back into your HR platform. Just going to hand over to Neil Pinches, who's going to take you through a case study, and then we'll give you a view of what Evolve actually looks like. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. So I want to just talk to you through one of our clients' case study where we implemented payroll. So it's a very large global manufacturer, 49 countries, 63 payrolls. When we started, it's about 2,500 payslips, and it's grown to be over 6,000. So we receive their data via SFTP, and we basically validate that data, we press that into Evolve. What does that mean? So we look initially at the data file, and we make sure the data is in the format that we expect to receive it. So if we expect to receive alphanumeric or numeric, that's what's being passed across. And then we do a second level validation that says, okay, let's check the fields themselves. So if we receive data for Neil McAllister, we check that that employee ID exists on our system. If it doesn't exist on our system, then basically we raise a case, and then we work with the client to get the information for Neil in the system so we can move forward. And we do that across a number of different fields and elements. So, for example, pay elements, a new pay element, a new code. We check to see that exists before we process the data. And what we do is we do that on a daily basis. We can do it weekly, we can do it monthly. But by taking the data into Evolve, and rather than just in the old style of just passing the data across, we can highlight those issues very, very quickly, get them resolved, and basically do payroll more efficiently and help our partners and our local offices, our local teams do the payroll on time. Now, this client used PeopleSoft initially, so we transitioned across from PeopleSoft, we received daily change data, and then in June last year, we did a big bang, and we worked and we moved across to Workday. Now, that transition from Workday didn't take a day. It took about 8 months to work with the client, nearly a year on that one. And we do Workday slightly differently. So when we integrate to our HR systems and take data from them, you have a choice with Workday. We're not a certified partner. We do things differently. We take all of the HR data from Workday at the same time because we have the capacity and the systems to do that. So Evolve can handle data across all countries. And we work with the client to identify any gaps and how that's going to work. And we process that into Evolve through validations. One of the big differences with this client is that we don't receive all of the breakdown of the payroll calculation. So we will get told, for example, that Fred worked 50 hours. We have to apply the pay policies and pay practices for each individual payroll, and in some instances, differences for an individual employee that says, okay, this employee actually worked 35 basic hours, 5 hours time and a half, 10 hours double time. And we apply that, and we provide that data to our local teams. They do the payroll calculations. They pass that data back into Evolve. So we now have all of the data. that we need to see in Evolve. And that means that we can provide that data back to our clients. So with this client and all the clients on Evolve, we receive back the regulatory reporting, the payslips. They can be reviewed on Evolve, they can be checked on Evolve. And then when everything's okay, we can transmit the payslips back to the client. So with this client, they've got their own employee self-service, and we pass that back to be fed back to clients. And we also produce GL journals in one place. So rather than having to go to each individual country, all 49 of them with the new GL format, we can produce all of that from a single place, which is Evolve, and that makes reporting far more efficient, and we can pass that back into the format the client needs to process into their finance system. So we move on just to talk about how does the global ecosystem work within Evolve. So if you see on the right-hand side of the circles, you can see the different elements. So we've got the client, we've got the payroll team from the client, we've got the payroll managers from the client, we've got our local payroll experts, and you've got the central BDO team. They're all managing the payroll, they've all got case management, workflow, tasks and approvals. They're all doing this from a single platform, which is Evolve. And that's all managed from the Evolve, and we'll see that in a few minutes. And then alongside that, you have the other elements of beyond payroll, for example, like the HR support, expense and benefits, time and attendance, expenses. We can all wrap this in as well, but as part of the Evolve ecosystem for our clients and support that from our local offices. So just a couple of basics around Evolve in terms of security. So security is user and role-based. We review them regularly with the client, and we make sure everyone's informed of any changes. Data is encrypted at rest as well as in transit. We go beyond. We're concerned with GDPR. We're concerned with data integrity and security, and we use a Salesforce product called Shield, which enables us to provide additional encryption-specific fields. So, for example, we'll encrypt names, we'll encrypt employee ID, but we won't encrypt the payroll data itself. Data is held in the UK and Germany, and obviously all our third parties are bound by both BDO policies and physical security requirements in order to help support the whole in data integrity. I'm just going to move on now to a demonstration of Evolve. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. And it's looking a bit red and amber at the moment. So we have two views of Evolve. The idea of Evolve is one place where people can come in and see the overall state of their payroll. Now, we are mid-month, and basically, if you see red means the payroll is overdue, or it has a critical case logged against it. So Evolve works on the principle of workflow, which is individual tasks, and also a case. A case is a query, a question. It can be related directly to a payroll, so it could be, for example, where's my bonus, or we haven't got some details, or it could be we're thinking about entering into an agreement with a client, with somebody in Burkina Faso. Are you able to support us in payroll if we were to get some employees, for example? We use Evolve for that, and because it's integrated and it's encrypted data, it means that people can pass information quite freely within Evolve without worrying about, data encryption or leakage in the same way that you would really try very hard not to pass data across by email, which is the old method. So we have two views. The first view is the overall view, which the manager gets to see. And I'm just going to show you a second view, and this view is really around payroll users. So they don't get to see the nice map of the world. What they get is, what do I have to do now? What are my assigned tasks? What cases have been assigned to me, and what cases have been raised to me? Other than that, everything else works the same. So, for example, if I click on Canada, it's all about immediacy. It's all about what do I have to worry about as a manager. So, whilst it's amber, payroll is in progress, but there are no overdue tasks and there are no critical cases. I do not have to worry about this country at the moment. I can click down and look at tasks if I want to, but I don't really have to. As a manager, I can be comfortable that actually this payroll is being managed. So there's an approval task here, and that's on the 21st of February. If I just go back into the map and And if I then click on the USA, so just wait for the Wi-Fi to click back in. If I click on the USA, so I have 3 tasks overdue, and I've got no critical cases. I'm just showing this in terms of, I click on the first one, which is the provide multi-country payment information. Now, how do we share information? So we've talked a little bit about how we can have integrations into Workday. We're quite agnostic, so we can receive data from PeopleSoft, from Workday, SuccessFactors, and so on. And we also work with Dynamics, amongst other platforms. That data is mapped into Evolve, and that's fine. But we all know we can't pass everything through integration. And also we've got some clients which don't have the same HR system in each country, or maybe they're just not big enough in order to spend, to warrant the investment in, say, Workday. So what we can do is we can take template information. So a client can complete a template with the data, and then they have a requirement to come into Evolve and say, okay, I now need to give this information to BDO. I can go in, click on attachment, and I can upload my file. So I'm not really bothered what I'm uploading at the moment. Obviously, if you were the client, you'd be specifically uploading files for the US payroll. So I'm just uploading 4 files. So just do that. And obviously, there's my 4 files. So giving information to BDO is as simple as just clicking on attach, on upload the information, and there you go. And actually, if you want to download information from the Evolve, it's just a matter of highlighting either specific files or selecting Select All. So I'm just going to select a couple of files. I'm going to download those, and you'll see at the bottom of my screen the files are coming across. And this works for everybody. So everybody who's using Evolve can use this functionality to upload data and also download. So, and again, I can click on the spreadsheet. It's going to open up in Excel, and then it's going to be blank. But there's the data, there's the spreadsheet. Okay? And there we go. So just going back to this information. So this is a task. I can go in, I can add the information, and then just completing the task will then turn that task to be green. Simple as that. And I can go back to my dashboard. Now, it will still be red because there's still other tasks to complete for this payroll. So what's next? So basically, the way the task and the workflow operates is it goes from task to task. It determines who's responsible for those tasks, and it then moves them on. So I will now get the next person for this workflow will get an email to say, notification to say there's now a task for them to come in and do some work on it. I'm going to select different look at payrolls. So let's select the payroll. I'm going to select Brazil. And in terms of Brazil, I'm going to select Rio de Janeiro. And what we're going to do is have a quick look at what kind of data and what kind of information is being held. So this defaults to the current period. Now, this payroll is late in terms of I can look at what tasks are due. So again, there's provide more information, and there's an approved payroll task. I can also go back and select a prior period. So I can go back and select December. Okay. And again, I think December was completed. I can see basic information on the payroll. I can then also go down and look at the individual tasks. I can look at cases. So a case is basically, as I said, a query or a question, and this case is being closed. So again, I can go and have a look at the case, see the information on it, and in the same way, I can also add attachments or download attachments, the same as I did before if I wanted to. And I can also add comments as well. So comments works in the same way, and I can do the same thing with tasks, so I can just add a comment. Okay. And what this means is it then gets saved against that task or against this case. So I'm just going to add the comment, and there we go. Just going to go back and just continue and just show you what information we're holding. Because with Evolve, we're capturing all the information from the client. It's basically from the initial data receipt from the client through to the results back from the local office. So I can look at employees. So I'm going to look at Jessica Jones. Okay. Now, with Evolve, we're able to we have clients, obviously, where they have employees which move from assignment to assignment. So we have a payroll assignment. What does that mean? So what that means is the same employee number can be moved, can be used as that employee moves around. So maybe they've now gone to do some work in Brazil, they're going to go back to France, they start in the UK. I can select different payroll assignments and I can see where the employee has been operating. So I'm going to go back and select Rio. I can see that this one's active. I can see basic information for the employee. This has been passed across from the HR system, or it's been all via template. So they've been entered into that, various payroll assignments, bank account information. So the way the encryption operates is if I've got the access to the data, I can see the data across the system. Now, it could be limited to a specific payroll. I could have all payrolls in the country, and so on. I can have multiple countries. Compensations, I can see the various permanent elements of the payroll and the temporary elements of that payroll, some basic financial information, basic timesheets, and again, I can use attachments. Okay. Now, just going to go back to the payroll. I'm just looking in terms of the processes, just to give you an idea of how cases work. So I'm going to go back to the payroll. I'm going to select a task. Select this task. And I'm going to raise a case. Now, because I'm raising a case against a specific task, what that means is it tracks information. So it's going to create, so it populates the payroll, the entity, the pay period, and the task. So I can go missing data. Please provide data. We are late. And I can then assign that. I can assign that back to the client, and I'm going to raise that case. Okay. Let's go a quick look at the detail of the case. So that case is now being raised against that task. I can raise cases in different ways. I can also look at data in different ways. So I click on cases on the left-hand side. I can then move in. I can filter Brazil. I can filter specific payrolls and so on. I can just look at closed cases if there are any. There's different ways I can filter that information to get where I need access to. And again, if I click on Raise Case on the left-hand side, what that does is you can notice it's not pre-populated. So now I can go and raise a case for any entity I want and just do it more generally. In terms of calendars, what the calendar view gives me is a very high level in terms of all the individual tasks and when they're due. So if we look at February, you can see black means not started, red means overdue. But if I go back into January, for example, you can see that there are some completed tasks and when they were completed. So just to close out, I'm just going to go back to the dashboard and just show you a couple of things around the dashboard. So as you can see, we get the global map, you get your global overview. At the top, you get your most recent. This is your quick access. So the most recent payroll I looked at was Rio de Janeiro. Jessica was the most recent employee. The last task was provide information and so on. So I can click back into those and get immediate visibility of what I last did. On the right-hand side, I get a list of all the activities which are due to me, and that's a combination of tasks and cases. And if I move down in terms of the home page, I've got the calendar, which is a slightly different view, but the same information, a news feed, and the idea of the news feed over time, it will be more curated and it'll be created so it'll be more specific. So if you're in France, for example, we might have an announcement if the social security changes, or Japan if the local directorship rules change. And just as we move down, just some more things, some very basic metrics. And the way we're developing the metrics is if I just click on here just to show you some information. So we've got the data. So what we've been thinking and working on is how best to use that data. Data only as good as we have it. So what this is showing me is basic metrics around cases raised. So if I click on cases raised, I can see in Brazil the bulk of cases got raised by BDO Central, followed by the local team, and so on. And I'll be able to drill down further as we build out those interfaces to get more information. Why were they raised and why were they resolved? One of the big differences now with Evolve is that when we close a case, we basically want to understand what caused the case to be open. So if it was a query, so if a client gets an approval task to approve the payroll, there's a query as to why we haven't approved it. For example, let's say it's missing my bonus. It always misses my bonus. I think I've checked Ashley. Always misses my bonus. The question will be, did we receive the data on time for processing? In which case, if we did, why wasn't it processed? Was it a problem by the local team, by the BDO Central team? And we basically use that to close the case out and then determine what was the root cause. And we can report those back in our monthly metrics and our SLAs and feed those on. Just some more information. So obviously with employees, we're holding basic information around employees, date of birth, and so on. And this is just showing in terms of the male-female split. This is by country. I also want to show you male-female split so we can see those as we build down in terms of new starters and so on. So the idea is to give you access to metrics. So we'll have basic metrics within Evolve. If you've got Power BI, access to Click, and so on, then you can get the output, and we're looking to develop those outputs for you. Basic information around payments, and there we go. So I'm just going to go back to my dashboard, and in terms of just show you the other view. So the other view is showing you specific tasks, specific cases, and again the rest is the same. So this is just a high-level overview of Evolve. We can talk further if people want to know more information, but otherwise I'm just going to go back to the presentation and just sort of go over some of the benefits of Evolve. So data gets validated. We have multiple types of validation. So we validate data coming in from the client. We validate data coming back from the local team in terms of the close to net information. So what do we validate there? So we look at the variances month on month. We compared gross data. So in the example before, we sent 35 hours basic hours for that employee across the local team. Did they process 35 basic hours, 5 hours overtime, that kind of thing. And we can also have predefined limits. So for example, we have clients where they have special bonuses, special awards, and it's never more than say 500 or 2,500 local currency. So we can add in predefined limits and it gives us warnings if we exceed those limits. And again, we talked about GL files, so we can create GL from Evolve. It doesn't have to go to our individual countries. We can produce it in one format and straight into and provide that back to our clients. And also payment files. We can do the same thing with them. So if clients have got a relationship with Citibank, HSBC Group or whatever, we can provide bank files from Evolve centrally to support the transmission of the payroll. Just some final benefits: visibility, tasks, workflow, SLAs. It really helps in terms of communication. It really helps in helping the business understand the status of payroll and helps us deliver better service and helps the client see where there are any problems. Just need to pass back to Ashley. So hopefully that was interesting. Any questions, we can come back to them.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions we'll come back to. Yeah.
Okay, so I just found that helpful. We clearly we majored on Evolve. It would be rather strange if we picked someone else's systems and environment to talk through. But the aim was that that's illustrative of what's going on in the market and to meet basic expectations. So we still have clients very happy to just have a really basic data exchange and a payslip and a tax return service. We have people who want that a broader service on a single country basis or a multi-country basis. So the aim is adaptability, and it was an illustration of what's going on wider in the market. We are very happy to take any questions that are coming in now, or indeed we will follow up and ask you to submit questions afterwards. But I think, Neil, you've got a couple of questions that we can cover in the 12 minutes left for this webcast.
Right. Thank you, Ashley. Yes, we've thanks for submitting questions. We've had a couple of duplications, which is good. One or two bits hopefully were covered off during the presentation as well, but I'll pull out a couple because I'm conscious of time. And the first one relates to data getting into Evolve. The question I think was, do we pull data out of an HR system into Evolve? I don't know if Neil, if you just want to talk a little bit more around how we interact with HR platforms.
So if we look at Workday, for example, we're not a certified partner with Workday, so we don't get direct access into Workday itself. But what we do is we work with our clients, and we provide a basic XML schema, which looks at the PETCHI file, the pickoff file, but generally the PETCHI file today. And we work with the client to develop a PETCHI file that provides the data set that we need to run the payroll. Now, the individual aspects of that can vary client by client, country by country, because of all the specific fields in countries that are so different. So Germany, church tax. India is all about dependencies. Every country is different, and some clients do not customize Workday to the extent where they hold all that information.
Correct.
And you can't hold all that information. So what we do is when we implement a new client, we work with them in terms of workshops. We understand the standard they've got, data they have country by country, identify any gaps, but we then work with them to develop the XML schema for the PETCHI data or the pickoff data, and we then import that into Evolve, and we use that. That's where the validation kicks in. And we generally use SFTP as a mechanism to transfer the data. And there's different ways we can do it, but that's how it generally works. And it's also true in terms of PeopleSoft. So again, we'll work with PeopleSoft, with clients, identify the data that's been held with them, and then bring that across. And we can do CSV, we can do XML, but it will vary client by client.
And I'm not sure which HR system in particular that question related to, but I guess BDO's position is that we're agnostic, really. We like to think that we play nicely with everybody. We have a good relationship with Workday partners. We have a good relationship with the guys at SuccessFactors. It could be Sage People. It could be Element Suite, who we have a very strong relationship with, which actually, just ironically, if you are in the market for a new HR platform, you've definitely got to look at Element Suite. Kind of unsung hero of the HR world, but yeah, we're happy to explore any HR integration, and we don't feel that we're restricted in any way, really.
And we're fairly, in terms of the mapping, we are flexible. So the way we get the data, we map those fields across in the relevant HR system, generally Workday, PeopleSoft and so on, and we map those into relevant fields. And it does vary by country, because often you find that the US is very well represented in terms of the HR system, but maybe Asia-Pac isn't.
Cool. One of the other questions I picked up on from a couple of people was around a roadmap. So there is a roadmap for Evolve, obviously, as you'd expect. Some of the functionality that is on that roadmap we can't share without an NDA in place, but that's fine. But other elements, that are, enhancements around analytics. We're looking at RPA, like we talked about earlier, in terms of automating. In fact, we're using RPA in a number of areas to automate a lot of that manual intervention. There will be other areas around enhanced reporting, and yeah, basically we have user forums. We use our client group to recommend what we could do better, where we could add value into Evolve, and we put up a long list, and then we distill it down to what's actually achievable and what's actually going to add value to the clients.
Our key objective with Evolve was to simplify the process for our clients and for local teams. Hence the real in-depth we went in terms of development around the interface itself and the user experience. We want to simplify it. One thing we are not doing payroll calculations ourselves. That's down to the experts in our local countries. Hence, but we bring the data in so we can report on it. It's all about integration. We know a lot of clients can't do that. It's about templates, making data coming across, and we can deal with that. So there's different ways. But I think the key things for us right now is improving on the user interface, make sure that works for clients, and developing our reporting capabilities for clients and analytics.
relating to security roles in Evolve, allowing users to enter data directly into Evolve, i.e. stuff that's not stored on HRIS.
Okay, so currently we do not allow users to enter data directly into Evolve. What we provide clients is the template. So we have country-specific templates, and what we do is provide those to the clients where they can complete the missing information, or it could be that they've already got a template and we can pass that in and we can upload that into Evolve. So new starter forms and so on, they come through template. We don't allow clients at this point in time to directly change data in Evolve. I should add, though, that actually what Evolve does do, in combination with Shield, it does provide full change monitoring and an audit functionality. So we can see at any point in time what changes have been made by whom, and we can also track particular events, so in terms of to monitor for data leakage and so on.
Excellent. Okay. I think, yes, we had quite a number of questions, but they all related to the HR integration, the roadmap, and then that final question as well. So thank you very much for those. I'm going to suggest that I give everybody 5 minutes of their day back, because I think we're finished, unless there are any other questions, which I haven't seen. But we have recorded this webinar. We'll be looking to obviously edit it, and we can share it as well. And we can also, for anybody who requests a copy of the presentation, we can also share that with you as well. So I'd just like to say thank you very much to everybody. Thank you to Neil. Thank you to Ashley. And obviously, if you have any other questions, feel free to contact either myself directly or any of us, either email or over LinkedIn, or Mike, whose details you have from the invite. So yes, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.